The amount of times I was asked when I was single, like, why are you single? And since I've been in a relationship, not once has anyone said, why are you in a relationship? Until today, actually, until this interview. That is one of the reasons I think people stay in or enter into relationships that aren't ideal. The most lonely you can feel, I think, is lying next to the wrong person.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Separate Bathrooms. We would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay our respects to the elders both past and present. How are you, sweetheart?
I'm good. Did you say your name?
No, I didn't.
You think people might just know by now?
Well, the cop didn't on the way in. Look, here's what happened on the way in. We're running late. And I've walked out of the house unbeknownst to me without my phone.
Yep.
And we got pulled over for a breathalyzer.
Yep. Past that was good.
Oh, yeah, well, it was fine. It's been, 12 hours maybe? And the police officer said, where's your license? And I said, it's on my phone. He goes, it's on your phone. I went, okay, fine. Where's my phone? Not on the back seat in the house. How often do you walk out of the house without your phone?
Look, sometimes it's rarely, but sometimes if I do, I'll have to go back and get it because I think it's so important that I've got to have it with me. It's probably really not that important, but sometimes I feel it is if I've, with kids and my mum's health and stuff like that. But it's rare that I'm spend a day without it in my bag or somewhere close by.
I feel strangely calm without my phone. Anyway, so here we are.
I know. Yeah.
Here we are. And I'm glad we could be all together for today's chat. We are thrilled to have Kerri Sackville and her partner Michael joining us.
When someone asks Kerri Sackville, what do you do or who are you? She says, I'm a writer. She's a columnist and social commentator where you've no doubt read her work in the Sydney Morning Herald, the Melbourne Age, the Brisbane Times and Sunday Life magazine. And she's the author of 5 books.
The Life-Changing Magic of a Little Bit of Mess, Out There, a survival guide for dating in midlife, The Little Book of Anxiety, another one, the 4th, When My Husband Does the Dishes, and her latest offering is The Secret Life of You, how a bit of alone time can change your life, relationships, and maybe the world.
Yeah, she's prolific and has covered an incredible range of topics.
Her partner, Michael, is beside her. He's a mystery man. We love our mystery partners. So much gold to mine. Let's welcome Kerri Sackville and Michael. Welcome, Kerri and Mike, to the bathroom. It's been a busy day. How you guys doing?
I'm okay. I'm a bit shaken. I just got word that my 16-year-old has got her L's, so it's a lot to process. There's a lot of fear, trepidation.
I do know that too. Like when all 3 of ours got their L's, and actually it's more when they got their P's, the first moment that they take off without an adult in the car, that is when I just was like, bubble of protection, bubble of protection, bubble of protection.
Yeah, because you can they can be a great driver, but there's a bunch of numpties out there on the road, as we know.
That's true.
I'm probably one of them sometimes.
Or they could be not a good driver, like one of my kids.
Right.
So,
okay. Is this the one that just got the L's?
No. Well, we don't know about that one yet. No, one of the others is not such a great driver. And we've had a few incidents. So I'm just really wondering what is ahead of me with, now 3 of them on the road.
It'll be great content for you.
There you go.
Yes, it will.
Kerri, when we were researching you, and I've got your book because we're with the same publisher.
We are.
So I've got the book, and you have 4 other books, and you write like a demon for Channel 9 group, which used to be Fairfax.
Yes,
So it's all the Age and the Sydney Morning Herald and Brisbane Times. So I know a lot about you. Mike, you are a mystery man. We can't wait to treat you as an onion and start pulling the layers off.
Oh, gosh. That sounds awful.
I hope you wore some jocks.
Oh, my God.
We need some backstory with you two. How did you meet?
I'd been divorced at the time when we met, for many years, and I'd been on the dating scene for a long time. I'd actually written a book about dating in midlife, and I was probably not in a fantastic place in terms of dating, and I was invited to speak at a conference. this person invited me. And I went to the conference and I was up on the podium speaking, and I looked down at him because I recognised him from his LinkedIn profile. And he was as you do. And he was sitting in the front row, and I can't describe it as anything other than this immediate sense of familiarity. It was really strange. And I'd met a lot of people, been on a lot of dates, and I just felt this weird familiarity.
Yep.
And we caught up for a coffee after the conference, just as a thank you, because we didn't get to speak in the green room. And I thought he was lovely, but I just, as I said, was not in a great place. I was not in any sort of frame of mind to be dating. Mike was actually in a relationship at the time, his post-divorce relationship, and nothing ever happened then, but we stayed in very vague contact. And then during the pandemic, he called me and I was super excited. I was like, oh, wow. I was in a very different headspace. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really special. He's calling me. Turns out he was going through his entire Rolodex.
I was calling everyone.
Because you were lonely?
No, I was checking in. Just literally checking in.
Really?
I ran
everyone was okay during COVID?
I ran my own business, was checking in with clients, employees, all that kind of thing.
Speakers at
friends.
conferences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
people in the Rolodex.
Yeah, and we caught up for coffee a few times. And then my child started working near him, and I called him up one day and said, oh, my daughter's nearby. Do you want to have a coffee? And so we started catching up when I would drop her to work. And
I was single.
He was single by then. Yeah, he was single.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm done with relationships. I had been done with relationships. I was really off the dating scene. And that went on for a while. I was like, oh, this is a really lovely friend. And then one day I was sitting next to him. We were having a coffee and I was like, uh-oh. I kind of got hit with the what would you call it? The lust stick? Cupid's arrow is a better way to put it.
Nice.
Mike, were you deliberately sending out the vibe? Were you pushing it out there?
Yeah, were you already into Kerri?
I'd always really liked Kerri.
Yeah.
And without going into any detail, things had happened where we didn't think a relationship was possible.
Yeah.
I
was giving out hostile vibes. I think.
Kerri was giving out hostile vibes.
Anti-man vibe?
Honestly, really.
Hostile anti-man vibes. And I think Kerri was stuck in her pattern of what she saw as an ideal partner.
Yeah.
I didn't fit into that mold.
That's so...
And I'd come out of a relationship fairly battered and was not interested, but we got on incredibly well at an intellectual level.
Yeah.
Dare I say, that's always been my hook, to have a cerebral connection. And we just vibed really well.
Also, he's really attractive.
And
he's a bit of a silver fox.
thank you.
Exactly.
And my daughters I have two adult daughters who I'm very close to. Yeah. The meeting that Kerri and I used to have on a Saturday morning for coffee when she dropped her child at work was preceding my Saturday morning walk with them, which is a standard thing that I do with them because we weren't living together anymore. And they said, Dad, you think you're just having coffee, but Kerri may not think that you're just having coffee.
Oh, so they put you on notice.
Yeah, they said, Dad, just be careful. You may want to tap the brakes a bit. And in fact,
Speaking of learner permits.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Wash the speed off here, buddy.
Yeah, and they did say, and so I did tap the brakes one week, and Kerri was...
I was so upset because one week
devastated.
I said, so I'll see you, I think I messaged, I'll see you for a regular coffee. And he was like, I can't this week. And I was gutted. That's when I knew, oh no.
Yeah.
I've really got it bad. And so I just had to wait for him to come round.
Right.
I think if I hadn't been in the place that I was, where I was comfortable by myself and kind of had taken a step back from dating, I would have been very anxious and I would have been wanting to know where is this going and what's happening and does he like me? But I really was comfortable just waiting and I was hoping something would happen by that stage. But if it hadn't, I would have been okay. But in the past, if we'd had that kind of interaction 5 years earlier, probably 3 years earlier, I would have been really anxious and needing answers.
Yeah, I needed time and space and trust, I think. Yeah.
So how long till you turned back around and went, actually...
Probably 5-6 months.
That's a big chunk of time.
Yeah, we had a really solid friendship by the time we actually did get together, which I never had before with the men I dated.
Yeah, and I was going through things at work and selling a business and... working my life out, and it was, in hindsight, it was really good.
What do you do for a living? We know Kerri's
Right now,
driver.
I'm just enjoying life. I've recently, nearly 2 years ago, sold the business.
Yeah.
Spent time with Kerri, spent time with my kids,
Yeah,
spent
right.
time with friends, joined a men's group, trying to build on the emotional intelligence that us men tend to ignore.
Yep.
And also, I'm very high maintenance. And my family's really high maintenance. He does a lot for us.
And honestly,
A lot.
slow down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about just quickly about the men's team that you're doing.
Yes.
That's great.
It's called the Men's Table.
Yeah.
It's a non-profit that's been going for nearly 10 years.
Yep.
There's about 160 men's tables around predominantly New South Wales. We meet once a month just as a safe space for men to talk. It's the predominant objective is not to talk about footy and shit. That's the that's the mantra.
Or golf.
Okay? Or golf.
Yeah.
It's to talk about
Jeepers.
feelings and what's going on in your life, what's concerning you, what's worrying you. It's the vault of silence. There's a mixture of men there, some who are in a good space, some who aren't in a good space. And it's all about men's health.
Beautiful.
And it's so important because we do it all the time. We
Yeah.
women just sit around and talk about our feelings all the time.
Yeah.
But men, particularly of our age, need something more formalised.
Yeah. I have a wide circle of male friends, but it can be very performative and transactional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We're never talking about what's actually going on.
Yeah. I started a charity in 2020 called the Men's Team based on exactly what you're talking about. I found recruiting in Australia is hard because guys will come and they'll check it out and they'll go, this is the best day ever. I feel so good. And then you go, okay, we meet up once a month. Well, they don't turn up next month because they feel like they've been fixed. And it's not about that. It was about really exercising your emotional fitness.
Yeah,
and I said,
exactly.
this is the best way when you get into situations with your partner or your kids or your work people, you've practiced how to communicate. So you're not going to be jolted in these moments where you go, I didn't know what to say. You've already done it with your team or at your table in your case.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
You both acknowledged that you were in previous relationships. How did that inform the way you got into this one that you clearly seem really happy with now?
So I left a marriage after 17 years. We've been together for longer than that. It was a very difficult marriage. And I jumped straight into a relationship with someone who was very similar to my ex-husband. That was a very difficult relationship too. And then I left that and really struggled on the dating scene for a long time. And as Mike kind of alluded to earlier, I had an idea in my head of the type of person who would be a great partner or an ideal partner. And it was all these kind of qualities in a person that had nothing to do with a relationship at all. So it was like, they had to be kind of certain educational standard and a certain status, and they had to highly, what I would call, we've had endless discussions about this, what I would call highly intelligent, but not necessarily emotionally intelligent. I had a very, very narrow idea of what intelligence was. And these people were not making me happy. I was more and more unhappy. And I was really stuck in this pattern. And I saw so many people also on the dating scene who were similarly stuck in these patterns where you just keep ending up with what is familiar and what you're used to, and maybe it's got something to do with your family of origin. And so I actually stopped dating entirely after about, God, how long had I been on the date? Many, many years. And I stopped and I thought, this is not working and I really have to stop and take a break and reassess. And I bowed out, and that's sort of my book came largely from that experience of just learning to be by myself. But in terms of relationships, after a while of being by myself and not being in a relationship, I actually asked myself for the first time, what do I want from a relationship as opposed to what am I looking for that another person represents?
Right.
And I kind of came up with two criteria, like fundamentally. And one was I wanted someone whose company I never got tired of. And I wanted someone with whom I felt emotionally safe. And I had never had the two together. So I had met men who I found really interesting, stimulating, or good company, but they didn't make me feel safe. And then I'd met men who made me feel safe, but I was really bored by. And I found immediately, as soon as we started just catching up for coffee, that I loved his company. To this day, I've never got sick of it. We've known each other for quite a few years. We've been together for over 2.5 years. And he makes me feel really safe. And so to have those, and what I'm always telling people now who are looking for partners is it's so helpful to distill down to the real essence of what you're looking for in a relationship. And that has nothing to do with these qualities that you think. I mean, so many people are looking for someone who's tall or who's, you know.
In between this age and this age.
Exactly. Or who have children or don't have children or live in this vicinity. And that's got nothing to do with what makes a relationship work. So that's my answer. You're probably a little bit different.
Yeah, my experience is very different. I had a marriage that was nearly 30 years. I left that. I pulled the plug on that. And my daughters at the time came to live with me. So we had this cozy little threesome going. Then I kind of fell into a relationship that I wasn't looking for. And it exposed, I guess, a lot of my inexperience with relationships. I eventually got out of that. It taught me a hell of a lot about what felt safe, what felt unsafe, what I was looking for, what I wasn't looking for. And to be honest, I wasn't looking for a relationship. And that's why Kerri and I had this friendship that was on and off. We'd catch up for coffee or we'd discuss books and statistics and other things that she needed a hand with when she was writing her book. I just thought, okay, she's nice. We get on well. There was a spark, obviously, but I wasn't ready. Eventually, it just felt right. She'd met my children, kind of got the nod, from them.
That's important.
Which is incredibly important.
Yeah. And they're amazing young women. And honestly, they were, I wouldn't say a draw card, but they are just such a great bonus.
Right.
Because you don't always love your partner's kids, but they are really fantastic young women, and it just feels like a huge bonus to be able to have them.
Did your 3 stamp of approval?
Oh,
on Mike
God, that
as well?
was a whole long saga. That was actually really difficult.
Okay.
My kids they had a different situation. They were very anxious about me being in a new relationship.
Yeah.
They had a lot of, they had their own traumas and baggage. And my little one was fairly easy, but the 2 big kids particularly were reticent. And one of them in particular was absolutely adamant that they did not want a man in the house. And we had a couple of really difficult moments early on in the relationship where, you feel really awful, like saying, I'm sorry, you can't actually come into my house because, one of my kids doesn't want you there. And I really just wanted to get to a point with my children where I could have Mike in my house and it be okay and no one was anxious or upset. And I thought they don't need to interact, they don't need to be buddies, just that they're comfortable in the house. And took a very, very kind of slow, softly approach. And honestly, it has been greater than I could ever have hoped for. It is at a point where my son will, because he's been living out of home for a while, he will call me up and say, I want to come over, but I want Michael there. Like I want someone sensible to talk to. And he'll call him for advice and they have their own kind of relationship. Yeah. My middle child is forever messaging him for advice and just loves him. And my little one is, just terrific and great with him. And she'll say to me, is Michael coming over? And I'll say, yeah. And she'll kind of do this big dramatic eye roll. She goes, only kidding. I love Mike. And I never, ever would have expected that. And he is, what he said before is accurate. He is really calm. And the one thing you can say about me and my family, we are not calm people. And so to have this very grounded, stable, measured, reasonable person has been incredibly, I think, grounding for all of us.
When your kiddo went, I don't want him here, and having to have that conversation with Mike, I get the feeling that would have been absolutely fine with you, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like it so
Literally,
was.
Just went, no worries.
Yeah.
Literally was.
Yeah.
I was in agonies and he was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm not dating your children.
Yeah. I mean, the chances are I had to go outside and pee on the tree.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because I literally wanted to use the bathroom.
I was going to say, I'll be at the end of the corner kicking stones against the neighbour's wall.
Yeah. But I think it's so important just to recognise that you are not dating your partner's kids and they're not dating you, and to not push them into any sort with these midlife relationships that they didn't ask for any of this. And so to let them kind of lead all of our kids, all 5 of them, we just let them set the pace, and they've all met each other, but we don't really do the blended family thing at this point.
Yeah, we don't live together.
No.
We,
And
so you guys are not living together, isn't that right?
We spend a lot of
Every day.
Yeah, we see each
Generally
other every day, and we kind of share the same bed probably four nights of the week.
3-4 nights a week, yeah.
And I've been on holidays with him and his kids. He's been on holidays with me and my kids. But no, we still have separate places, though they're very close.
I love, Kerri, though, that you didn't give up on love. Even, it may have felt like you were going to, but I think that that's really important because I know some people feel I just keep on choosing the wrong guy. But it's like once you adjusted your intentions and understood what that meant, it just created a whole new place for that man to step into. So I love that.
It did. I have to say, I don't know how hopeful I was. I think there was a long time where I thought it's really not going to happen for me. And I got to a point where I was okay with that, but I never shut down completely. I knew that I needed a break, and that was really important. You get, especially with online dating, it is so rough, and there is so much bad behavior, and also there's so much choice. And it's really, you get to a point where you're just having like the same conversations day in, day out, these same inane first conversations. You can't work out who's who, what's what. And so to step away from all of that and give myself time and space to kind of clear my head and recalibrate was really important. But I always had, I guess, that little chink of maybe not conscious hope, but obviously allowing for the possibility.
Yeah.
One
of my dearest friends, she's 48 and she's divorced, and she's same thing when she talks about the apps, and she's back on them and then she's off them, and then she's like, because I have to have a break from them because it's just doing my head in. Even if she's not dating people, it's just that the swiping and answering it. It's just exhausting, and she's like, I just want to meet someone in real life.
Yeah.
And like you two did, you built that friendship, which was so beautiful. And I know, of course, the apps work for a lot of people, but maybe our generation, it's not as much fun as it is when you're younger. I don't know.
It also, there's a lot of reasons why it's difficult, but one of them I think is that you meet someone and you have to make a decision on the spot.
Yeah.
If this is somebody you want to pursue romantically.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we just met each other. Imagine having to make a decision right now before, the end of the hour, if you think you could have a relationship with me.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult. It's so pressured. Yes. Well, no.
That's a great idea for a TV show.
The decision, I think, is made for them. And then they spend the rest of the show regretting it.
Yeah, right.
But, we had the time and the space to actually get to know each other without that pressure. Yeah. And I don't think there's a way around that.
Yeah.
I think that's just the nature of online dating.
What's the nature of dating anyway? Isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But I think when you meet someone organically, when you're meeting a complete stranger and you're starting from a position of knowing nothing about them, and it becomes a bit like an interview. And we had met through a work thing. Soon after that, I'd met your daughters, and there's just more to build on. We could talk about other things other than what do you want from a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't the reason for our
Never.
having
That was
met.
no.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Yeah,
exactly.
you connect
It
in
wasn't
a
a
different
perfect
way.
match, and the screen slides back and you're going, okay, here we go.
No, definitely
as
not.
special
It was-
as those days were, it
Quite
was
simple.
not.
I never heard of that
But that
show.
moment is the best moment ever.
Yeah.
With that screen, when the two eyes lock, in that moment,
And
there's
you would
the money
know
right there.
exactly.
Yeah.
If you could see on the face.
You get a spark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike,
Yeah.
so Ali, beautiful, saying about love makes me get all emotional. And you do that, choosing love. We've had a lot of those moments where we've just gone off the charts, away from each other. And then the only reason we came back was because of love and going, how do I feel? And Al taught me that. Was that the same with you after your marriage? And did you think that you could love again? Was that an open question for you?
I think Kerri and I, we've never had anything happen where we've needed to walk away. Occasionally, you can feel a bit irritated when I see that she cuts a loaf of bread from the middle. Rather than eating from the outwards in, she cuts
fair call,
it in
mate.
the middle and then eats it the big pieces first, Or to see the way she deals with the toothpaste tube is enough to...
From the middle?
Oh, yeah.
From the middle?
But just
Or the top?
grab, no,
Yeah,
the middle,
right.
just
Grab,
grab,
squeeze.
Yeah, no.
squeeze.
Fair enough.
In fact, her daughter had said, I can see Mike was here overnight. The toothpaste's all nice and neat. The tube's been flattened nice and the lid's back on.
Folded
And,
from the
He's
bottom.
got these ridiculous rules, like you're not allowed to eat the salad with your fingers. Like, what is that about? Or when I eat in bed, I've got to like not spray like orange juice all over the bed. Like so,
Serious.
so anal, really.
But I think getting back to your question or your statement is, I think it's the combination of being a safe space. We're on the same page. Our values are pretty much the same. Yeah. Occasionally we'll have a disagreement, but for me that disagreement tends to feel like the voice in your head that's trying to get you to see reason and not be stubborn rather than argue with that person to win a point. Like with Kerri, it's not a who's won the last discussion over something. Okay. Yeah, we never have there's no points winning. Whereas in the relationship I was in before, it just felt like a fight the whole time.
Yeah.
And that was just Yeah.
Okay, so Kerri, you've written a ton of opinion pieces. I went back through. I found them. It's a wide range of topics: royals, gambling, sex, relationships, food, hospitals, parenting. There's sleep. Right, the list goes on. And then I read one where you're actually calling yourself out for thinking you know a lot about a lot of things, but really not knowing much at all.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful article. Used the Shakespearean quote, "The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool."
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Question. So in a relationship, do you have to allow for your partner to be right sometimes, even when you know he's wrong?
This is such a great question. I had this idea always that it was really, really important to be really smart. And the way to impress a partner was to be smart and have really searing insights about the world. And I would use my intellect to impress people. And with Mike, it doesn't work at all. Like, he'll be like, "You're so dumb," like, but in a nice way. Like, what would an example be? Like, I'm an opinion writer, and I know that I have ideas about things, but then I won't know. Like, what was that word in Wordle once that I
Logophile.
Logophile was one.
And then you had it in your article. It was cork.
Oh,
Cork,
that's
right,
cork. I wrote that. I had no idea what cork was. He's like, "Really?" And I didn't know the word logophile in the spelling bee for the New York Times. And anything practical, like, he'll be amazed because he's really practical and he can fix things and he knows how things work, and I have no idea. And it's been very humbling, but it's also been wonderful for me to be able to defer and to not have to like prove myself all the time. That was just my paradigm. Right. And he's not like, I know he likes to read my articles and we have this great conversation, but I don't have to prove a point and I don't have to prove how smart I am. And it's such a relief. Like, it really is. And it's really nice to then, I think when you don't feel safe in a relationship, you're constantly defending yourself, and it's very hard to hear when you're wrong and the other person's right, because you don't feel, emotionally secure. And so you're constantly in defensive mode. But I feel really safe. So if I mess up, or if I say something ridiculous, or if he kind of rolls his eyes in a very, gentle way, it's okay. Like, I feel safe enough to be able to go, "Oh yeah, that was really dumb."
Is it okay to be dumb, Mike?
Of course it is. I'll give you an example. I fixed a switch in the house the other day, to all the electricians out there, and I put it in upside down. Okay, so the top was not was out when it was off.
It was a temporary switch.
Temporary switch anyway. And Kerri said it's the wrong way around. And I had to explain to her not to worry, that when it's dark, it means it's off. And when it's light in the room, it means it's on. And I'm coming tomorrow to fix it.
Yeah, I love that you've touched on like how many sort of different forms of intelligence that there is. You've talked about emotional intelligence. You've talked about just, the absolute, the geek out, like, incredible intelligence that some people have, but like can't string out two words about how they're feeling together. And I always find they're really interesting, what people put, in that basket of what is really important. And we're forever telling our kids, it's okay, you're emotionally intelligent when they don't do well at school. It's like, it's okay, empathy, when someone's feeling off. So don't worry about your math score. It's okay, you're going to get through life just fine.
I've had the same conversations.
Yeah. And I put a lot of stake in emotional intelligence. That's very, very, very important to me. Hence why I married Cam.
She's often giving me a hope. I'm her project.
Yeah.
Call me. I'm Ruprecht.
Oh, mother.
Mike, Kerri's obviously shared a lot about what she's learned from you and, your smarts and your calmness. What have you learned from Kerri? What does Kerri teach you?
How to cut bread.
How to cut bread. I think Kerri's taught me to feel safe again in a relationship.
I know what
Right.
I've taught you. I've taught you to see other people differently.
She has taught me to see other people.
Talk about that a lot.
Yes, we have.
Dive
which
into
is-
that a bit for us. What do you mean?
I have seen some people close to me in a very different light. And I think I've done the same for
Yeah,
her.
definitely.
And that has been a bit of a struggle, where you see people that have been around you your whole adult life and you've kind of not realized that there are flaws there, but let's say some of their flaws have impacted on my relationship with them. So often if you're in a relationship where you subsume yourself in order for the other person to be who they are and comfortable with you, often you're not being true to yourself because you're just letting them behave poorly or,
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know how to...
I think coming
that
to
makes
relationships in midlife, I think it's different when you're together from a very young age and you grow together and you experience things together. But we have come into a relationship in our 50s. We are now a bit older than that, but in our 50s. And
With baggage.
Yeah.
But so you're suddenly letting people into your world that other people haven't necessarily been in before. So, for example, Mike has been into my relationship with my kids and nobody else has done that. And so he shines a light. He's kind of lifted the veil on some of my interactions with my kids, things that I haven't necessarily done well or that I have done well or, patterns. And I think the same with him, not with his kids, but more, with other people in his life, whereas no one's ever been privy to that before. And so somebody else comes in and was like, do you realize that when you're with this person, this happens? Or do you realize that this person is always talking like this or behaving like that? And they're like, oh, wow, I hadn't noticed because
You get used to it. Yeah. An outside perspective is really important.
It must be they've made movies about it, of course, The Stepfather and things like that, where the overbearing guy comes in and does all that stuff. But it must be you have to be emotionally aware and sensitive and empathetic and also patient too. Because it must be very much a tight rope walk.
Yeah,
at
I
times.
think we've both taught each other a lot. I can't necessarily put my finger on and give you exact examples, but we have helped each other with our interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
And we've helped each other become better people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It may mean you rub other people, old friends, up in you rub them up the wrong way now, or you don't see them in the same light that you did before. But it's to your own benefit, if I can put it that way, because you can deal with them better.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's also just aging, don't
It
you
is
find
aging,
that too,
yeah.
where it's also that moment of just going, I really don't want to, it doesn't feel good to be around that person anymore. I've come to that realization of like, this is not a relationship that fulfills me in any way, shape or form, and I'm really okay to let that go. And we've talked a lot about that, where
sometimes there's
people
great
come and go, and
sadness
you're
around that too, honey.
yeah,
Correct.
of course.
Correct.
But
There
Let
is
that
sadness
go.
that you may be of
Yeah.
leaving that relationship,
Yes.
which has been of use to you over
Yes.
years, but now it's no longer of value to you, or not value is the wrong term, but it's no longer helping
Serving
you,
you.
nurturing you, serving you,
Yeah.
and in fact you're better off without it.
Perfect segue to talk about your book,
Oh, my book.
right? The Secret Life of You. Why did you write it?
Oh, I wrote it because I was in lockdown. At the time, I had my 3 kids living at home and I was in lockdown with 3 children, and simultaneously I had absolutely no solitude because I had 3 kids and, we're in an apartment. Yep. And I was also incredibly lonely. And, I wasn't in a relationship. I couldn't date. And I found myself literally spending hours and hours and hours on my phone, like to sort of try and escape the loneliness, escape just being with myself. And I realized I had been running in a way, I think, for a very long time, certainly since my marriage ended and probably a long time before that. And when I say running, I mean like running from myself, just from actually sitting and being alone with my thoughts and alone with myself. And I decided at that point I'd already stopped dating, but then I couldn't date, obviously. And I decided to try really hard to put down my phone, to put down distractions, and just to learn to sit with me. And, we all grew up like in the 70s and 80s. Back then we had a lot of time alone. You had a lot of time in solitude, because if we were in our bedrooms, or I don't know about your house, but I certainly did not have a telephone in my bedroom.
No.
We had, one television at the time. We had one telephone in the kitchen. I didn't get a clock radio in my bedroom till I was, I think, a teenager. And so if I was in my room, I had to be alone with my thoughts. I was either reading or writing in my diary or just thinking my thoughts. If we were on the bus, if we were walking to school, if we were waiting somewhere, we'd be alone with our thoughts. And these days, because of technology, we don't have to be alone. We can distract ourselves immediately with this whole world that's in our phones, and the thoughts and musings and videos and music of other people. And so very few of us are alone. And I decided that I wanted to learn to do that and see what happened. And it was a real process, and it was really hard. And once lockdown eased, I actually went and stayed alone on the coast by myself for a few days, where I would really speak to almost no one except like to order my coffee in the morning. And I found
and was that like a monologue when you get?
Oh yeah,
hey, can I get a coffee? Always a great day.
Oh yeah, I'm very chatty anyway. But it was genuinely life-changing. And when you discover something that is so helpful and so transformative, you sort of start to proselytize a bit. And I started to research all the benefits of solitude.
Right.
And out of that came this book. So
interesting. I was literally just having this conversation on the way over here. I am forever battling my phone, love-hate relationship with it. And I was thinking about, I still remember that feeling of being in my own home when I didn't have a phone, before phones were invented. And I still remember the relaxation in my body and in my mind that I had at that time, because no one else could reach me. I didn't have to do anything on my phone. I didn't have to post something or write something or do something or reply to someone. I was safe because no one else could reach me in my home, other if they picked up the home line, and that was it. And I could let the answering machine just answer it. And I really miss that. So this is exactly what you're talking about.
It is. And it's when we are constantly distracting ourselves, we miss out on so much. And I see it now with kids, and the difference between the way that my elder two kids, who are almost 23 and 25, the way that they interact with their phones compared to the way my 16-year-old does. And they still had some time without phones.
They can still remember
so they can put them down. My 16-year-old and her friends, they can't. And they are attached to their phones, and it is affecting everything. And if we don't have that time alone, we never really know ourselves. We're constantly reacting instead of responding and living out our lives and our truths. We can't fully emotionally regulate, because you can't when you're constantly stimulated like that. Having no time and not understanding and knowing yourself affects your relationships. It affects loneliness, because there's a lot of reasons, but it affects the development of your moral centre. It affects your creative life.
Yes.
And it affects your self-awareness and your ability to live fully. And it is something that an entire generation and subsequent generations are literally being robbed of. And I have a particular bugbear. Like, I don't judge parents. I've got 3 kids. You got 3 kids. Parents will do what they need to do to get through the day. But I now see, everywhere I go, like little tiny kids with their iPads, their iPhones. And kids are naturally very good at being alone with their thoughts. You see a kid playing with his toes or chatting to a toy. They're actually talking to themselves. But we put devices in their hands really early, and they lose that capacity, and it will affect their whole lives.
Yeah.
It's the other way too. I was at a resort last year, and I watched a man. He had 3 little kids, and he was sitting on his phone. The kids were in the pool with the mum, and he was on his phone, and I'm like, what is he doing? What is he doing? Is he working? Maybe he's working. No, he's playing a game of Tetris.
Yeah.
And it was like, dude, get off your phone because these kids grow up so fast. And it's a blink. And that's one of the regrets that I have is that, I was away working. I was, but I missed things.
Yeah.
And to have those wonderful holidays with your children where that's where the memories are made and they remember that slide and all those different things. But to be on your phone, and I get it because I can get addicted to my phone. Mike, you've been quiet about, are you on board with all this? You guys weren't together, were you, when you wrote the book? Is that right? Or
when I started.
Yeah.
No, but we were together when I published the book.
Oh, when she published the book.
Yeah, when it came out.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
And I read the book prior to publication, pointed out the typos.
Oh, yes. It's very good at
Were
pointing
there
out the
still
typos.
after the proofreader did it?
Yes, there were.
And you found them?
Yeah.
One or two, yeah.
One or two.
He's forever
One or
finding
two
typos,
dozen.
that's
like
good.
in my columns as well. It's like,
Oh, that's
I'm
good.
beginning to get a picture of Mike. I think he's very, very meticulous.
he's a details
Yeah,
man.
If you
details
were
man.
a golfer,
detail
he'd be
man.
holding everyone to every
Every
rule.
count,
Yes.
This is rule 12B. Leave your ball there. You've got no shot.
But no, I think, I'd met Kerri in her sorting her shit out phase, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I just keep improving. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you know. Keep improving. I have no doubt you already know this through your research. There's a chronic problem happening probably across the world, but I know in Australia of people just feeling lonely.
Yeah.
And how do you describe that, and how do you talk to those people about, no, it's important to be alone when they already feel so lonely, but I also know you can be lonely in a room full of people.
Yeah,
you know.
it's a really interesting issue, and a lot of people confuse loneliness and solitude. And there's a lot of talk about a loneliness epidemic, and I did a lot of
Yeah.
research on it, and I talked to a lot of people. People's perception of loneliness is real, but in fact, research shows that loneliness isn't any worse than it ever was before. And when you think about it, and something that I mentioned in the book is that, for example, if you were a scullery maid back in, the 19th century and you were working for a family, you would expect to be alone all the time. If you were someone in an arranged marriage and you were married off to someone for, reasons of property and money, you would not expect to be fulfilled in your relationship. You would expect to be lonely. Certainly until you had kids, and then, you wouldn't expect to find emotional connection through your intimate relationship. Our expectations of relationships have changed. And so partly why people feel more lonely than they ever did is because we expect our intimate partners and our friends to fulfill all our emotional needs.
Yeah.
And loneliness is the difference between the connection that we feel at any given time and the connection that we seek. So you can imagine that if we are expecting to feel deeply connected at all times to our partner, the romantic love marriage is a very new concept.
Yeah.
And so we expect our partners to be our best friends, our lovers, our nurturers, our financial supporters, good parents to our kids. That is a lot. And we expect to feel connected and understand each other at all times and to be on the same page. And so when you don't feel that, when your intimate partner can't give you that, then you can feel very lonely. If you don't have a partner and you expect to have a close group of friends and, you feel connected to them and you catch up regularly and they're going to meet all your emotional needs, and you don't have that, you're going to feel very lonely. So our expectations have changed. And then, of course, we use our phones so much that we conduct a lot of our relationships through text messages, through WhatsApp groups.
Yep.
And as I'm sure you know, like you speak to your friend, you actually catch up for a coffee and you feel really connected, but you can exchange 1,000 messages and you're not going to get that. And then there's social media where we outsource our sense of self and our self-esteem and our need for connection to random people on the internet, which leaves us actually feeling emptier than before. So there are things that we can actually do when we're feeling really lonely to increase our feelings of connection. And one of that is, we can increase our intimacy with other people by having interpersonal interactions in person as opposed to on our phone, but also by increasing our connection to ourselves, we feel less lonely. When you're lonely, it's a craving for connection, but you can actually feel more connected to yourself. You don't necessarily have to seek that feeling from other people. And again, the more we can connect to ourselves and be able to support and nurture ourselves and talk to ourselves, so that if I'm feeling sad or upset, sure, I can talk to Mike, sure, I can talk to my kids, my friends, but also I can talk to myself. I can say, it's going to be okay. You can get through this. Like, I know now how to support and nurture myself. And so that means that I feel less lonely, and my needs for connection aren't quite as heightened. And so the connections that I do feel are much more satisfying. So it's a very long answer to
Fantastic.
Well, it's a great answer, and I relate to it. Early on in our marriage, Ali and I split up, and one of the things while we were split, I was encouraged by my counsellor to go, and she said, "You need to know that you are the coolest person in Cameron Daddo's life.
Yeah.
You need to go
So
find
true.
that you can hang out by yourself without needing someone to pump up your tyres." And she often talked about being alone is not lonely, as you do in your book. And then I took it a little bit further. I wrote a song called Be All One. When you split alone up, it's all one,
Yeah.
right? And because be all one, not lonely, love you one and only was the line in the song that I wrote.
We're going to have to go and download that.
I never could recall, well, it's a demo anyway. But I totally get that. It's a fascinating part of the book, that chapter around loneliness and alone, that it's not the same. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
There's also a societal stigma against living alone.
Yes.
And I think everybody thinks
Crazy
everybody
cat
who lives
lady.
alone
Yeah.
is lonely.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
It's just not true.
Just not true.
Yeah.
And there's
It's
also
honestly not true.
incredible social stigma against being single.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the reasons I think people stay in or enter into relationships that aren't ideal. And you know, as you said, like you can be far lonelier with other people than you can be by yourself. And you can, the most lonely you can feel, I think, is lying next to the wrong person.
Yes.
And as a society, we are so scathing of single people. And the amount of times I was asked when I was single, like, why are you single? And since I've been in a relationship, not once has anyone said, why are you in a relationship? Until today, actually, until this interview. And I think that there needs to be a societal shift, because the more that we pathologize being single and see it as kind of this weird, like sad, pathetic waiting room as you're waiting for the train to take you to Coupletown, it means that so many people feel pressured to get into relationships and end up feeling lonelier than they did before. So there's nothing wrong with being single, and you can be very happy. And as a single person, you can get plenty of intimacy from friends and family and from yourself.
Yeah.
And it is far better to be single than to be in a relationship with the wrong person.
And look, we've seen some things come to light in my life recently with the societal capital put on entertaining people in your home. I suddenly realised, we're not getting invites anymore. We'd catch up with friends in a restaurant, but no invites at home anymore. And it was an eye-opener.
So are you saying that you would like to do that more?
Of course, that's what I used to do all the time in your marriage. So I'm saying when you're married and you're cohabiting, there's kind of this social capital that you have and this ability to entertain. Yeah, it just came as a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I think when you're single, a lot changes.
Yeah.
And I think that there is there's less of a place for single people. My whole social circle changed when I got divorced. You are invited to places as a couple, and married couples tend to socialise with each other. And when I became single, I was seeing my girlfriends, for coffees, and I wasn't seeing them on Saturday nights with their partners. And our society is really set up around coupledom.
Yeah.
And that's all great and well when you're in a couple, but there are plenty of people who aren't. And I just think we need to kind of widen our concept of what it means to live a good life and how one can live a life. And there are plenty of ways to do that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
What do you want to pass on to your kids? What do you want them to know?
I'm really big on resilience. I think that's incredibly important. And I think as our world gets more and more complex and more difficult, resilience is probably the most important quality that we can have. And so all three of my kids have different qualities and different personalities, but I try really hard to give them resilience and to encourage them to develop resilience. And one of the ways we can do that is to learn, as I said, to support ourselves and to be able to comfort ourselves and to not always have to turn to other people. I am there for my kids. I've always been there. But I really very gently try to encourage my kids first to turn to themselves. And that can be as simple as asking yourself what your opinion is or what you think you should do before you ask someone else. So one of my kids in particular will constantly defer to me and say, Mum, what should I do? And so I just try gently to be, well, ask yourself first, and then if you're still struggling, come and talk to me. So for me, it's that's the most important thing that I want to give them, to learn to be a little bit self-sufficient and self-nurturing whilst enjoying the support of the people who love you.
Okay. Anything, Mike?
Look, I've been very lucky to end up with 2 adult daughters. That's a shout out to my ex-wife that have ended up being incredibly resilient, self-sufficient young women that are successful in life to date. But I think for my girls, having had them since the divorce come and live with me, I would like them to be able to see that the relationship I have with Kerri is possible, as in safe, trusted environment for you to have, and the one is in a relationship, the other one isn't. You can get what you want, and it's what Kerri has said in one of her columns. Sometimes it's better not to be in a relationship than to be in one that you're unhappy in, and I want them to always have that in the back of their mind.
Wonderful.
It's a great thing to
Don't waste your time.
All right. Well, speaking about not wasting time, we do a 2-minute shower. So it's 5 questions.
Look at you with your segues.
Yeah,
So
keep your answer. I know.
good.
How about that? Well, number 1, both answer each question as we ask you. And as we say, we're in the shower, so we're into water conservation. So keep them short. What habit does your partner have that you find adorable?
He makes me coffee every morning in bed when we're in the same bed, and I bloody love that.
I just look at her face and I laugh. To be honest, it's not even a habit, but it's just that she smiles all the time.
That's so good. What is it about your relationship that makes you feel grateful?
Just to feel so safe and secure and calm, and to be laughing all the time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I can't improve on that one.
And occasionally he lets me pluck his ear hairs, which is just so joyful and satisfying.
Yeah. The sound of silence. What do you miss, aside from plucking ear hair, what do you miss when you're not together?
Just the yabber, the just constant talking.
Yeah. And for me, I used to think that I would never, ever want to touch somebody else while I'm sleeping. I was always other side of the bed, separate dooners, and we generally fall asleep all spooning. And so I feel a little bit bereft when I'm in my bed by myself now. It's where's the warm body?
What the world needs more of is?
Well, I have to say the capacity to be alone, because that's what my book is about, but also kindness and emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I'd say kindness and critical thinking.
Yes, that's a good one.
Okay.
Definitely.
And the rebirth of truth.
Yes.
The rebirth of truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, yes.
That's the name of a book, isn't it?
The rebirth of truth.
Yeah, that can be our joint book.
Yes.
Given that it's died
that.
so much
Yeah.
in the last
There'll be
10
no
years.
typos. There'll be no grammatical errors.
Nothing.
How to cut a slice of bread.
Bread,
Yeah.
Yes, from the end.
outside. Yeah. Right. Describe each other in 1 word.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Oh, just the best. Seriously.
That's 5 words.
Oh, is that? Oh, yeah.
4
God,
words.
that's too many. See, he's catching me up.
Counted them.
Describe you in 1 word.
You can have 2 if you need.
Can I have 2? My safe space.
Oh, there you go. You can make that into 1 word. All right, Kerri Sackville and Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank
Kerri's
you.
book is The Secret of You.
The Secret Life of You.
I'm sorry, The Secret Life of You.
That's the one.
Kerri's book is The Secret. No, let's not edit that out. I'm not going to edit that bit out because that's kind of fun. The Secret Life of You. Brilliant. Thanks, guys, so much.
Oh, this was great.
It's been terrific.
Well, thanks so much for your time.
Well, I know I say this often with people that come in here.
I think
but-
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I could have listened to them asked them
Very
their
smart.
ideas for at least another half an hour.
And then I wanted to ask Kerri too what her next book is going to be about.
Oh.
Is it going to be about their relationship now? Because she wrote about the power of being alone and now she's in this relationship that she's so happy in. Is there going to be something around that, or who knows?
Alone
Who
together.
knows? Alone.
Maybe it's that.
Yeah, exactly.
But fantastic. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Kerri and Mike. And
Go out and grab yourself a copy of the
yeah,
book.
the book is The Secret Life of You. Get it right, Kando. But it's wonderful. And
It is.
Kerri, you know a lot of her stuff anyway, because she's in all those
Yeah.
fabulous publications. So anyway, thanks for being with us, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening.